It was in this village that Eric met Destiny. She worked at the local bakery, her hands always dusted with flour and her smile as warm as the bread she made. Destiny was the kind of person who could light up even the darkest corner of your heart with her kindness. One afternoon, when Eric sat by the market square, hungry and with nowhere to go, she noticed him. Without hesitation, she crossed the cobbled street and handed him a steaming loaf of bread.
Here, you look like you could use this.
Eric stared at her, stunned by the unselfish gesture.
Why are you helping me?
Why wouldn't I?
That moment lit a spark in Eric. Eric Montgomery sat alone in his penthouse at the top of the world. High above the city skyline, encased in glass and luxury, he looked out at the twinkling lights below. To an outsider, he had everything: a fortune that could buy countries, a fleet of cars faster than the wind, and properties that stretched across continents. Yet for all his wealth, Eric's heart was empty. Each room he walked into echoed a hollow reminder of what he lacked: love. Over the years, relationships had come and gone, leaving behind only transactional connections. Friends wanted favors. Lovers wanted access to his fortune. Even the warmest of smiles seemed to fade when the promises of luxury weren't enough. Eric longed for something real, something genuine. Quietly, a thought began to gnaw at him. Would anyone love me if I had nothing? One night, in the suffocating silence of his luxury, a decision crystallized in Eric's mind. He would abandon his life of wealth and pretenses, strip himself of every outward sign of success, and search for the one thing his billions could never buy: true happiness. The next morning, he vanished without a trace. A week later, Eric arrived in a small rustic village, unrecognizable in his new identity. His tailored suits and Rolex watches replaced with tattered clothes and a cane. His face was covered in a patchy beard, and his walk bore the uneven rhythm of a man crippled and just scraping by. To the villagers, he was nothing more than a beggar. To Eric, he had stripped himself of armor. Here, beneath the unfiltered sky, he felt more human than he had in years. It was in this village that Eric met Destiny. She worked at the local bakery, her hands always dusted with flour and her smile as warm as the bread she made. Destiny was the kind of person who could light up even the darkest corner of your heart with her kindness. One afternoon, when Eric sat by the market square, hungry and with nowhere to go, she noticed him. Without hesitation, she crossed the cobbled street and handed him a steaming loaf of bread.
Here, you look like you could use this.
Eric stared at her, stunned by the unselfish gesture.
Why are you helping me?
Why wouldn't I?
That moment lit a spark in Eric. For the first time in a long while, someone had shown him kindness with no ulterior motive. Over the following weeks, Destiny's kindness became a constant in his life. She would bring him extra food, sit with him during her lunch breaks, and listen to his fabricated stories of hardship without judgment. Slowly, Eric found himself opening up, not with the veneer of wealth or status, but with raw honesty and vulnerability. Destiny's father, Roland, was no less compassionate. An aging man with calloused hands from working the fields, Roland treated Eric with dignity, even offering him a corner of their small home when weather grew harsh.
No one deserves to be out there on nights like these.
Living under their roof and in their world, Eric's perspective began to change. He saw life stripped of excess, where happiness was found in simple joys. A shared meal, laughter by the fire, the rhythm of the rain outside their humble home. But with every kind smile from Destiny and every act of generosity from Roland, Eric felt the weight of his lie grow heavier. They deserved the truth, but how could he tell them when their sacrifices, feeding him when they barely had enough, patching his clothes, and offering him shelter, came from their genuine belief that he was a man in need? Then one fateful night, disaster struck. Roland had been struggling to pay off a loan he'd taken to keep their home. The debt collector arrived, demanding full payment. Despite their protests, Destiny and Roland were helpless, except for one thing. Roland offered to sell the only valuable thing they owned, a small family heirloom, a gold pocket watch passed down through generations.
No, you can't.
Eric protested, guilt gnawing at his soul. He knew he could fix this. A simple call and their debt would vanish. But to reveal his identity now, after everything, would be an unforgivable betrayal.
We don't have a choice. All we have is each other, and that's worth more than any possession.
Silent agony consumed Eric as he watched Roland hand over the pocket watch, sealing their fate to save their home, and by extension, him. The moment of truth arrived sooner than Eric expected. A week later, while Destiny was cleaning, she stumbled upon a clue, a small, weathered photograph of Eric in an old newspaper clipping. It showed him at a charity gala, clean-shaven, suited, and unmistakably wealthy. The headline read, "Billionaire Bachelor Eric Montgomery's Latest Business Venture." Shock danced across her features as she clutched the paper close. That evening, tears streamed down Destiny's face as she confronted him.
You lied to us. You let us believe you were someone else while we sacrificed everything to help you.
Eric could barely meet her eyes. "I never meant to hurt you," Eric said, his voice thick with regret. "I didn't come here to lie. I came here to find something real. And with you, I did. But I was afraid that if you knew who I really was, it would ruin everything." Destiny's heart ached with betrayal. How could she reconcile the kind, broken man she had grown to care for with the billionaire who had hidden so much from her? "I didn't care about who you were or what you had," she said quietly. "I cared about you because I thought you were honest. But you took that choice away from me." Eric's heart shattered. He had set out to find love, but his deception had destroyed the one real connection he had ever known. In the days that followed, Eric left the village, but this time he didn't return to his penthouse. Instead, he worked quietly to repay Roland and Destiny for everything they had done for him. Their debts disappeared, their home was restored, and a mysterious investor supported Destiny's dream of expanding the bakery. Yet Eric kept his distance, knowing that some wounds took time to heal. Months later, on a crisp autumn morning, Eric returned to the village, not as a billionaire or a beggar, but as a man humbled by life's lessons. He found Destiny at the bakery, her hands busy kneading dough. Her face was guarded when she saw him, but softened as she noticed the sincerity in his eyes. "I came back to say I'm sorry," Eric began, "for lying, for taking your kindness for granted. You showed me what love and humanity truly are, and whether or not you can forgive me, I'll always be grateful for you." Destiny studied him for a long moment, then gave a faint smile.
You're lucky I believe in second chances.
As Eric's heart swelled with hope, the small bakery filled with an unspoken promise that redemption, though hard-earned, could lead to something beautiful. And so Eric learned that love was never about wealth or status, but about the courage to be vulnerable, the honesty to be real, and the willingness to care without expectation. The price of love, he realized, wasn't measured in money, but in the depth of one's soul. True happiness isn't found in riches, but in the connections we nurture and the love we give. What would you sacrifice for real human connection?